双语音标领航，注音阅读启蒙，叶兴阳有声读物。
Count Bunker by J. Storer Clausen. Being a bald yet voracious chronicle containing some further particulars of two gentlemen whose previous careers were touched upon in a tome entitled The Lunatic at Large. By J. Storer Clausen. Count Bunker. Chapter 1. It is only with the politest affectation of interest, as a rule, that English society learns the arrival in its midst of an ordinary continental nobleman. But the announcement that the Baron Rudolf von Blitzenberg had been appointed attaché to the German embassy at the court of St. James was unquestionably received with a certain flutter of excitement. That his estates were as vast as an average English county, and his ancestry among the noblest in Europe, would not alone perhaps have arrested the attention of the paragraphists, since acres and forefathers of foreign extraction are rightly regarded as conferring at the most a claim merely to toleration. But in addition to these, he possessed a charming English wife, belonging to one of the most distinguished families in the peerage, the Grilliers of Monkton Grillier, and had further demonstrated his judgment by purchasing the winner of the last year's Derby, with a view to improving the horse flesh of his native land. From a footnote attached to the engraving of the Baron in a Homburg hat holding the head of the steed in question, which formed the principal attraction in several printsellers' windows in Piccadilly, one gathered that though his faculties had been cultivated and exercised in every conceivable direction, yet this was his first serious entrance into the diplomatic world. There was clearly, therefore, something unusual about the appointment, so that it was rumored, and rightly, that an international importance was to be attached to the incident, and a delicate compliment to be perceived in the selection of so popular a link between the Anglo-Saxon and the Teutonic peoples. Accordingly, Die Wacht am Rhein was played by the Guards Band down the entire length of Ebury Street. Photographs of the Baroness appeared in all the leading periodicals, and society, after its own less demonstrative but equally sincere fashion, prepared to welcome the distinguished visitors. They arrived in town upon a delightful day in July, somewhat late in the London season, to be sure, yet not too late to be inundated with a snowstorm of cards and invitations to all the smartest functions that remained. For the first few weeks, at least, you would suppose the Baron to have no time for thought beyond official receptions and unofficial dinners. Yet as he looked from his drawing-room windows into the gardens of Belgrave Square upon the second afternoon since they had settled into this great mansion, it was not upon such functions that his fancy ran. Nobody was more fond of gaiety, nobody more appreciative of purple and fine linen, than the Baron von Blitzenberg. But as he mused there, he began to recall more and more vividly, and with an ever-rising pleasure, quite different memories of life in London. Then by easy stages regret began to cloud this reminiscent satisfaction, until at last he sighed. My dear London, how much should I enjoy you if I were free? For the benefit of those who do not know the Baron either personally or by repute, he may briefly be described as an admirably typical Teuton. When he first visited England, some 5 years previously, he stood for Bavarian manhood in the flower. Now, you behold the fruit. As magnificently mustached, as ruddy of skin, his eye as genial, and his impulses as hearty. He added today to these 2 more stone of Teutonic excellences incarnate. In his ingenuous glance, as in the more rounded contour of his waistcoat, you could see at once that fate had dealt kindly with him. Indeed, to hear him sigh was so unwonted an occurrence that the Baroness looked up with an air of mild surprise. My dear Rudolph, said she, you should really open the window. You are evidently feeling the heat. No, not the heat, replied the Baron. He did not turn his head towards her, and she looked at him more anxiously. What is it, then? I have noticed something strange about you ever since we landed at Dover. Tell me. Rudolph, thus adjured, he cast a troubled glance in her direction. He saw a face whose mild blue eyes and undetermined mouth he still swore by as the standard by which to try all her inferior sisters. and a figure whose growing embonpoint yearly approached the outline of his ideal hausfrau. But it was either St. Anthony or one of his fellow martyrs who observed that an occasional holiday from the ideal is the condiment in the sauce of sanctity, and some such reflection perturbed the Baron at this moment. "It is nosing much," he answered.
"Oh,
"I know what it is. You have grown so accustomed to seeing the same people, year after year, the von Grafners, and Rosenbaums, and all those. You miss them, don't you? Personally, I think it a very good thing that you should go abroad and be a diplomatist, and not stay in Vogelschloss so much. And you'll soon make loads of friends here. Mother comes to us next week. You know. Your Mauser is a nice old lady," said the Baron slowly. "I respect her, Alicia, but it was not Mauser's that I missed just now." "What was it?" "Life," roared the Baron, with a sudden outburst of thundering enthusiasm that startled the Baroness completely out of her composure. "I did have fun for my money once in London. Himmel! It is too hot to eat great dinners and to wear clothes like a monkey jack." "Like a what?" gasped the Baroness. To hear the Baron von Blitzenberg decry the paraphernalia and splendors of his official liveries was even more astonishing than his remarkable denunciation of the pleasures of the table, since to dress as well as play the part of hereditary grandee had been till this minute his constant and enthusiastic ambition. "A meat jack, I mean, or I know not what you call it."
Is it? I want a little fun.
"Alicia, a little fun," repeated the Baroness in a breathless voice. "What kind of fun?" "I know not," said he, turning once more to stare out of the window. To this dignified representative of a particularly dignified state, even the trees of Belgrave Square seemed at that moment a trifle too conventionally perpendicular. If they would but dance and wave their boughs, he would have greeted their greenness more gladly. A good-looking nursemaid wheeled a perambulator beneath their shade, and though she never looked his way, he took a wicked pleasure in surreptitiously closing first one eye and then the other in her direction. This might not entirely satisfy the aspirations of his soul, yet it seemed to serve as some vent for his pent-up spirit. He turned to his spouse with a pleasantly meditative air. "I should like to see old Bunker once more," he observed. "Bunker? You mean Mr. Mandel Essington?" said she, with an apprehensive note in her voice. "To me he will always be Bunker." The Baroness looked at him reproachfully. "You promised me, Rudolph, you would see as little as possible of Mr. Essington."
"Oh, yeah."
"As little as possible," answered the Baron, though not with his most ingenuous air. "Besides, it is 3 years since I promised. For 3 years I have seen nosing. My love Alicia, you would not have me forget mine friends altogether?" But the Baroness had too vivid a recollection of their last and only visit to England since their marriage. "By a curious coincidence that also was 3 years ago. When you last met, you remember what happened?" she asked, with an ominous hint of emotion in her accents. "My love, how often have I explained? That night, you mean. I did sleep in mine hat because I had got a cold in my head. I was not drunk. No more's on you. That you found in my pocket was a mere joke. And the cabman who called next day was just what I told him to his ugly face, blackmail. You gave him money to go away." "A Blitzenberg does not bargain mit cabmen," said the Baron loftily. His wife's spirits began to revive. There seemed to speak the owner of Vogelschloss, the haughty magnate of Bavaria. "You have too much self-respect to wish to find yourself in such a position again," she said. "I know you have, Rudolph." The Baron was silent. This appeal met with distinctly less response than she confidently counted upon. In a graver note she inquired, "You know what Mother thinks of Mr. Essington? Your Mauser is a vice old lady, Alicia, but we do not think the same on all opinions. She will be exceedingly displeased if you do anything that she thoroughly disapproves of." The Baron left the window and took his wife's plump hand affectionately within his own broad palm. "You can assure her, my love, that I shall never do that she dislikes. You will say that to her if she inquires?" Can I? Truthfully? Ace, my own dear. From his enfolding arms she whispered tenderly. Of course I will, Rudolph. With a final hug the embrace abruptly ended, and the Baron hastily glanced at his watch. Nearly had I forgot. I must go to Z Club for half an hour. Must you? To meet a friend. What friend? Asked the Baroness quickly. A man whose name you would know vello. Very well known he is. But in diplomacy. Mine Alicia. A quiet meeting in a club is sometimes better not to be advertised too much. Great wars have come from one word of indiscretion. You know the axiom of Bismarck. In diplomacy it is necessary for a diplomatist to be diplomatic. Goodbye, my love. He bowed as profoundly as if she were a reigning sovereign, blew an affectionate kiss as he went through the door, and then descended the stairs with a rapidity that argued either that his appointment was urgent or that diplomacy shrank from a further test within this mansion. Chapter 2. For the last year or two the name of Rudolf von Blitzenberg had appeared in the members' list of that most exclusive of institutions, the Regents' Club, Pall Mall, and it was thither he drove on this fine afternoon of July. At no resort in London were more famous personages to be found, diplomatic and otherwise, and nothing would have been more natural than a meeting between the Baron and a European celebrity beneath its roof. So that if you had seen him bounding impetuously up the steps, and noted the eagerness with which he inquired whether a gentleman had called for him, you would have had considerable excuse for supposing his appointment to be with a dignitary of the highest importance.
Halt!
He cried on learning that a stranger was indeed waiting for him. His face beamed with anticipatory joy.
Aha!
He was not to be disappointed. Will he be just the same? He wondered.
Ah!
If he is changed I shall weep. He rushed into the smoking room, and there, instead of any bald notability or spectacled statesman, there advanced to meet him a merely private English gentleman, tolerably young, undeniably good-looking, and graced with the most debonair of smiles. My dear Banker, cried the Baron, crimsoning with joy. Ace, how pleased I am. Baron, replied his visitor gaily. You cannot deceive me that waistcoat was made in Germany. Let me lead you to a respectable tailor. Yet, despite his bantering tone, it was easy to see that he took an equal pleasure in the meeting.
Ha! Ha!
Laughed the Baron, vot of Fonizing to say. Droll as ever. 5 years less droll than when we first
met,
said the late Bunker and present Essington. You meet a dullish dog. Baroness sobered reveller. Ace, no, not surely? Do not disappoint me, dear Bunker. The Baron's plaintive note seemed to amuse his friend. You don't mean to say you actually wish a boon companion? You, Baron, the modern Talleyrand, the repository of 3 emperors' secrets? My dear fellow, I nearly came in deep mourning. Mourning? For that? For our lamented past. I supposed you would have the air of a nonconformist beetle. My friend, said the Baron eagerly, and yet with a lowering of his voice. I would not like to engage a beetle mit Josie same feelings as me. Come here to this corner, and let us talk. Vader. Whiskey soda. Cigars all for 2.
come.
Bonker. Stretched in armchairs. In a quiet corner of the room, the two surveyed one another with affectionate and humorous interest. For 3 years they had not seen one another at all, and save once they had not met for 5. In 5 years a man may change his religion or lose his hair, inherit a principality or part with a reputation, grow a beard or turn teetotaler. Nothing so fundamental had happened to either of our friends. The Baron's fullness of contour we have already noticed. In Mandel, Essington, Bunker, was to be seen even less evidence of the march of time. But years, like wheels upon a road, can hardly pass without leaving in their wake some faint impress, however fair the weather. And perhaps his hair lay a fraction of an inch higher up the temple, and in the corners of his eyes a hint might even be discerned of those little wrinkles that register the smiles and frowns. Otherwise, he was the same distinguished-looking, immaculately dressed, supremely self-possessed, and charming Francis Bunker, whom the Baron's memory stored among its choicer possessions. "Tell me," demanded the Baron, "that you're doing MIT yourself, mein Bunker." "Doing?" said Essington, lighting his cigar. "Well, my dear Baron, I am endeavoring to live as I imagine a gentleman should." "And how is that?" "Riding a little, shooting a little, and occasionally telling the truth. At other times I cock a wise eye at my modest patrimony. Now and then I deliver a lecture with magic lantern slides. And when I come up to town I sometimes watch cricket matches. A devilish invigorating program, isn't it?"
Ha, ha,
laughed the Baron again. He had come prepared to laugh, and carried out his intention religiously. "But you do not feel more old and sober."
ah,
"I don't want to. But no man can avoid his destiny. The natives of this island are a serious people, or, if they are frivolous, it is generally a trifle vulgarly done. The diversions of the professedly gay hooting over pointless badinage and speculating whose turn it is to get divorced next become in time even more sobering than a scientific study with diagrams of how to breed pheasants or play golf. If someone would teach us the simple art of being light-hearted, he would deserve to be placed along with Nelson on his monument."
oh, my dear fellow,
cried the Baron. "Do I hear these kind of words from you? If you starved a city full of people, wouldn't you expect to hear the man with the biggest appetite cry loudest?" The Baron's face fell further, and Essington laughed aloud.
come,
"Baron,
hang it,
you of all people should be delighted to see me a fellow member of respectable society. I take you to be the type of the conventional aristocrat."
why,
A fellow who's been traveling in Germany said to me lately, when I asked about you von Blitzenberg, said he, "He's used as a simile for traditional dignity. His very dogs have to sit up on their hind legs when he inspects the kennels." The Baron with a solemn face gulped down his whiskey and soda. "That is not true about my dogs," he replied, "but I do confess my life is very dignified. So much is expected of a Blitzenberg.
oh, yeah,
There is much state and ceremony, and you seem to thrive on it.
well,
It does not destroy the appetite," the Baron admitted, "and it is my duty so to live at Vogelschloss, and I always wish to do my duty. But, sometimes I do want to kick the trace." "You mean you would want to if it were not for the Baroness?" Bunker smiled whimsically, but his friend continued as simply serious as ever. "Alicia is the most divine woman in the world. I respect her, Bunker. I love her. I consider her my better angel. But even in heaven, I suppose, people sometimes would enjoy a stroll in Piccadilly, or in some way to exercise the legs and shout MIT excitement. No doubt you think it unaccountable and strange, perhaps ungrateful of me.
ow,
On the contrary, I feel as I should if I feared this cigar had gone out and then found it alight after all." "You say so.
ah,
Then I will have more boldness to confess my heart, Bunker. When I did land in England, the little thoughts that would rise vaste land of freedom once again. Here shall I not have to be always the Baron von Blitzenberg, oldest noble in Bavaria, hereditary carpet beater to the court. I will disguise and go MIT old Bunker for a frolic." "You touch my tenderest chord, Baron."
hot, hot,
"My friend," cried the Baron, warming to his work of confession like a penitent whose absolution is promised in advance. "You speak the words I love to hear. Of course I would not be vict, and I would not disgrace myself, but I do need a little exercise. Is it possible?" Essington sprang up and enthusiastically shook his hand. "Dear Baron, you come like a ray of sunshine through a London fog, like a Moulin Rouge alighting in Carlton House Terrace. I thought my own leaves were yellowing. I now perceive there was only an autumnal change. Spring has returned, and I feel like a green bay tree."
hoch, hoch,
roared the Baron. to the great surprise of 2 cabinet ministers and a bishop who were taking tea at the other side of the room. That shall thee, due to show there is no sick feeling?
Ashim.
Reflected Essington, with a comical look. There's a lot of scaffolding at the bottom of St. James's Street. Should we have it down tonight? Or what do you say to a packet of dynamite in the 2-penny tube? The Baron sobered down a trifle.
Is it?
Not so fast. Not quite so fast. Dear Bunker, remember, I must not get into trouble at the embassy. My dear fellow, that's your pull. Foreign diplomatists are police-proof.
Ah.
But my wife. One stormy hour, then tears and forgiveness. The Baron lowered his voice. Her Mother will visit us next week. I love and respect Lady Grillier, but I should not like to have to ask her for forgiveness.
Yes.
She has rather an uncompromising nose. So far as I remember. It is a kind nose to her friends. Bonker, the Baron explained, but severe towards myself. For instance, laughed Essington. Well, what do you suggest? First, that you dynamite me tonight. No.
I vill take några försal.
Listen, I am now meeting a distinguished person on important international business, do you perceive?
Ha. Ha. Ha.
Tonight. It will be necessary we most dine together. I have an engagement, but he can be put off for such a great person as the man I am now meeting at Z Club.
Jag vill gå.
I should have been delighted, only unluckily I have a man dining with me. I tell you what, you come and join us. Will you? If that is the only way, yes.
Mit plisore.
Who is the man? Young Tullywaddle. Do you remember going to a dance at Lord Tullywaddle's?